Hello, this is Odomne, and you're on the YouTube channel of the internet's most notorious ginger man, Thorin.
Right, I'm here for another episode of Reflections, and this one is going to be with Kobbe, who is a veteran Danish AD carry, particularly most famous, obviously, for playing in LEC, although he did briefly play in LCS. I'm sure we'll get to that at some point in this discussion. Right, Kobbe, one thing I noticed about your career, and it's actually something that's quite common with people of your generation, is you didn't come along in the days when the LCS just began, and the scene was super small, and there was, realistically, there might have been 10 teams in EU or even proper pro level, and then everyone else, it was a wilderness of there wasn't a challenger scene, basically, is the point I'm getting to. There wasn't a structure in league. You're either in the top teams that you're in a Fnatic, or you could be any of a million people. I noticed in the era you came up, because you came up in the days when there was a challenger circuit, and then it became more and more formalized, and then you have obviously had the whole promotion system into LCS. Like a lot of people, you played with loads of people in all these mixed teams and semi-pro teams, and that actually people would know the names of now. Loads of these guys made it into LCS. Some of them were future teammates of yours, rivals. If people don't know, even though we're talking a long time ago now, 8 years ago, people like Broken Blade, people that people at the time had never heard of. So what I would ask is this: when you were in that era before the LCS, did you actually consider yourself did you consider yourself a talent? Did you think you were a prospect who was destined to be in EU LCS?
Yeah, for sure. At least in season 5, I think it was, when I was playing Challenger. I was basically in school and had to finish that, but I was kind of in talks with, I think at the time it was Zven and Reckless, or Zven was the next prospect.
Yes.
And I feel I was right behind in that line for the OG Fnatic spots. But yeah, eventually I was close to getting a tryout, but didn't get there, so I just finished school, and then, yeah, we did it our own way in Challenger Series, won that, and got in. But I think so, yeah, season 5 I was top 10 solo queue the whole year, so I think I was one of the better ones.
And for people who don't know, you even played with some of the later players from Splyce, years before that, like Wunder and Sencux and stuff. Have you always known these guys? Were they part of the friend group or something?
I mean, it was kind of funny how we just met randomly at the Danish LAN, because they were playing in, I guess, high tier teams within the Danish scene. I just at the Danish LANs, and I was a random. I was playing with platinum players in a really shit team at these LANs, and then one game I just met Sencux and his team, and I kind of 1v9'd against him, and that's how I got to know him. And otherwise, it's just through solo queue. I started talking to them through that was the TeamSpeak era. You join TeamSpeak with whoever people is on there, and you become friends. You play together, and yeah, I think that's how it started. I can't remember exact dates or anything. It's season 4 or 5.
No, fair enough. By the way, who was Wunder back then? Obviously now he's this crazy character everyone knows, and he's hailed as one of the best players. Who the fuck was this guy back in the day?
I'm not sure. I'm trying to remember. He was very different for sure. He was definitely a very funny guy from the get-go. His humor was just insanely funny to be around. And I guess immature, like everyone else was. I was 2 years older than him and Sencux at that point, but we were kind of kids, you know. It got me a bit on the spot.
Was he actually super good at the game? Was he could you already tell back then he's some talent?
Yes, I think so. He was very young, but I think he had insane knowledge about the game, and he was playing jungle and top. He was playing 2 roles basically. I don't think he was as insane back then, but I could tell he was gonna be very good in a year or 2. Yeah, I don't remember exactly how he was personality-wise. He was just a mega troll, really funny guy.
I mean, another thing I wanted to ask about as well was, before you came into LCS, because everyone's going to know you from the Splyce team and going on from that, etc., like the All Danish one and the other one later. But actually, I also noticed you twice had times where, if people don't know, part of the reason why people meme about the Gamers 2 name is because the old org Ocelot made was called Gamers 2. Most famously, that was actually the era when he was even playing. And then it did the slight transition to the non-Ocelot lineup, because it never used to make the LCS. And then it became rebranded as G2 when it came into LCS. And you notice they sort of almost pretend the history before the G2 part doesn't exist. It's just embarrassing they didn't qualify, you know. I noticed on both of them, when it was G2, Gamers 2, when they initially had Perkz and Ku and all those guys, you were in one of these lineups. And then even the lineup right before they came to LCS, you played in with Perkz, right? So what happened here? Was there actually a real chance you could have been in G2 in LEC?
Basically, yeah, it was. So I played with the Danish guys before, but that was before Dignitas and before we had like an actual org and could play, because the guys were too young to play Challenger Series, I think. But yeah, basically I kind of left my homies behind and I joined Gamers 2, as it was called. But I only stayed there for 1 month. I think we were really good in scrims and everything, but we lost the qualifier and the team basically disbanded after.
Was it that thing as well where you actually like flew out to some like Spanish island or something where Carlos lived? Was it that thing, or were you playing remotely or what?
No, I was not part of that. I was just playing from home, and the qualifier was online as well. I think it was a best of 3 or something, and we were heavy favorites, but I don't know what happened. I guess some choke there, but we lost, and team basically disbanded, and then I went back to Sencux and Wunder and begged them to take me back into the new team.
Okay.
Because the guy, I mean, they had to find a replacement for me, right? When I left them. And,
it's a bit BM coming back, like, can I have my spot back? Yeah, true.
It is, yeah. They had, I don't remember exactly how everything turned out, but basically I think I got a bit lucky because I thought Gamers 2 was like the best offer you could get in Challenger at that point.
Sure.
And I could play with Perkz, and KaSing was also like a high rated name at that time. So yeah, I was really happy. I eventually got back to my Danish squad, and we managed to get a full Danish team.
By the way, one thing I actually wanted to ask about was obviously in this initial lineup before you came to the Danish team, Perkz was on this team. In fact, it was the whole period where he briefly came in the squad. There's actually some drama people might know in the interview I did with him where he himself maybe was going to go and join Origin instead, or some like off-season shenanigans. Who the fuck was Perkz back before he was in LEC? Because if people don't know, like, as far like now he's a very beloved figure, and if people see trash talks, obviously you can back it up, can he's won all the championships. But I don't think people know he was pretty cocky even back then before he'd fucking done anything, mate. Like, he was definitely the kid who'd like let you know he's fucking better than everyone. What do you think? Would you have a similar sense of who he was back then?
Pretty much, yeah. Like, the first thing that comes to mind is just extremely cocky kid. Very funny to talk with and like play with as well. And I mean, I basically thought he had insane talent. That's why I wanted to play with him. And just that team in general. How was Perkz? I mean, all my memories just goes back to the old TeamSpeak days where you sit and talk anything from 2 to 8, 9 people, and you're just talking so much shit.
Right, sure.
Yeah, a lot of illegal stuff as
yes,
well.
A lot of conversations that we're glad weren't recorded, put it that way.
Yeah, exactly. So that's, maybe I just remember a lot of the persons there similarly, because all the high-elo skill players were kind of the same personality-wise, I think.
Yes. Because that was the funny thing, just before we get into all the actual like stuff people know, is most people will think you're only known from the Danish Splyce team, which became like, you know, some of the other famed players became a lot more famous. But like I was saying, there's a world where there's a whole bunch of different ways you could have been in the EU LCS, right? For all these different teams available, like at the time people were. Like, if people don't know, back then Perkz wasn't a huge name, you know. In fact, there was even people who were like, maybe there's someone else should be in the LEC over this guy, you know. So like, what I want to know was, do you actually feel like, was that actually like a missed opportunity? Could you have gone a different route, not with the Danish guys, and made it on your own? Would it have been different in your career? Do you care?
No, I mean, it's like, what if, like, I think I got close to some tryouts for some high rated teams, but it was still, I mean, it's a blur season 4 and 5, and I don't think I was a part of like the really cool kid squad, you know?
Right.
With,
yes.
Who was it, like Sven, Fabian, Perkz? Like, I would talk to some of them individually, but I was not really a part of that gang, I think, all the time. So yeah, I'm not really sure. I think it was the way to go, what we did with the Danish team and just making it through. Because that was, like, I finished high school and I had 1 year basically to go pro or do something else. So the timing was pretty nice for me.
I mean, the thing I think is crazy is if you actually look now back at the lineup of the Splyce team that everyone knows, Dude, with the exception of Sencux, which is just because hasn't played in a lot of years and he went to the ERL system before, everyone else is mega famous. Like this lineup, actually, we were all nobodies when he came into EU LCS, but like everyone in this team's done big things, and we'll talk about a bunch of them soon. So, like, what I would ask is, when this team was actually formed and you were in EU LCS, could you actually tell, like, this is actually going to be a good team? Did things just work? Like what was it like? Because obviously, it took like the first year to sort of charge up, but the team got pretty good within 1 year.
Yeah, I mean, we came in and I don't think we were really insane. I think we had good talent, and I mean, what made that team work in the end was that we really enjoyed playing together and we were spending every single day together. So, like after we did the change in support and everything came together, we started playing well. It's kind of hard. I don't know. When I think about it, it's I feel like we just needed time, because in the first split we kind of sucked, but we had a few games where you could see that we could do great things, but we were really fresh to the scene and, I mean, kind of clueless about the game in a way. I think at least I was myself. But that was like the time, for example, where I think a person like Wunder, even though he didn't perform too well first split, I thought he had a lot of knowledge about the game, for example. Sencux the same, and for myself, I think I just learned that first split from the coach, from the other players. Yeah, it's definitely a long time ago. I don't remember it too clearly, but it's, yeah.
If I ask how good was Kobbe in his first year in LEC, what would you say? Like, this was the era where if I just look up the champions you were playing, like, it's actually a pretty classic meta at the time. Like, obviously, we aren't in the era with a lot of the modern bullshit. It's stuff like Caitlyn, Lucian, Sivir, Ezreal, Jhin, Tristana. Like, these are pretty classic sort of prototypical ADC champion. Did you feel like you were good your first year individually?
The first, I mean, I guess I would say yes, in general. Like, I think I was very good in Challenger Series, at least every official game we played. But then the spring split, 2016, I think I kind of sucked most games. It was mainly like a stage thing. Like, I was playing kind of well in scrims, but official games I was not really doing too hot until the end of the split. And then from start of summer, I had the same level from scrims to stage. So it's like a mix. I think I did good in summer split and pretty bad in spring overall.
You mentioned it yourself, but in the team, like you said, the two you referenced had like game knowledge was Wunder and Sencux. If people don't remember, at the time, from my memory, these were the players that were hyped in this team. Like Sencux, actually, even though, like I said, of all the names, he's the one that's not as famous now, actually, of this lineup. The joke is, he was actually considered one of the stars of the team. I think people were quite impressed when he came into LEC. Like, can you give me some thoughts on him? Because as I say it, I feel like his career is one of the ultimate examples of, like, you know, in English, they're saying, like, you zigged when he should have zagged. Like, he just took, like, the wrong direction a couple of times, and then, if you know how League works, once you're out of people's mind, you just forget about you just disappear gradually. So I always thought it was a bit hard done by in his career. What would you say about this player in his career?
Overall, I think he got very unlucky with the things that happened later on. But from the get-go, he was the most hyped player on the team, I think. And I was maybe the second most hyped. Not really sure, but he was very good. And I think he still was the following years. Even in Misfits, where he played 2 years later, I think he was doing well, but he kind of took a lot of blame for what happened there, and then one bad split in Rogue where they got 10th place, and his career was kind of fucked after. So obviously that feels bad, because we were like really close, and I think he had kind of a rough time since. As you said, if you get out, it's really, really difficult to get back in.
Yes.
But yeah, basically then it was... Yeah, as I said, Sencux and me were kind of hyped. Wunder as well, but I think in Spring Split he also took a lot of blame for the games.
Right.
Even though it wasn't necessarily his fault what happened in the games, he just outside perspective he took a lot of blame. But then also, I mean, kind of same as me. I think he also just in Summer Split he became the best top laner in the league, right? In his rookie year, so yeah. Not sure what else to say.
It's all good. It's all good.
Yeah.
Right, let me ask about someone else then, because obviously your bot lane partner at this time was Mikyx, who's gone on to basically win almost everything he can win and have all this amazing career. But the key thing to me is people actually, it wasn't that, if people don't know, Mikyx was nothing like the player you all current fans are going to think he was back then. Like, the joke is he didn't even have any personality. No one knew this guy. He wasn't a guy in all the interviews. He's a very quiet player. He was a guy who in the game did like some flashy stuff, so I know analysts would like hype him, but actually he wasn't like some huge name. Obviously in your team he had that weird distinction of like everyone else is Danish and he's from like Slovenia or whatever the fuck, like so, some country that has no connection to Denmark at all, which was a little bit weird. So what I want to know is this: who is the old school Mikyx? Like, was he a similar player to now? Was he different? What was he like? Because in your lane, I mean, most people would think you were two quiet guys and you paired together with this guy. So what was it like? How did it work?
Yeah, I think the first year we were both very quiet.
Okay.
Like in the game mainly, but also outside of game reviews and stuff. I think we were both kind of. I mean, I spent a lot of time with him. I think he was a really nice guy. But in the game, yeah, we were both very skilled, but kind of quiet in game. Not really, calling too much. I think he's obviously very different, but still has traces of the same gameplay. But I think personality-wise, he's like, he's a grown man now. When he came in, he was a fresh kid who, didn't have much clue about life or what to eat and how to live and stuff like this. But yeah, I think it was kind of random how he came into the team. I just met him in Duoq, or it was called Dynamics.
Oh, really? Okay, that's how you found him. Okay.
Because I think he was like a Fnatic sub, and
Right. Okay.
after I played a few games with this guy, I had no idea how they didn't use him because, I played a few games with him and he was like the best mechanical support I ever played with.
Oh, okay.
Like,
He's already cracked from the beginning. Okay.
Yeah, like compared to what there was in solo queue and everything. Obviously, I didn't get to play with all the, I guess, top names there was. I don't know who was considered the best supports. I think it was like Zven-mithy. But yeah, I think he was really good from the get-go. He just needed to learn the team game, and yeah, he had games with 10 devs and so back then as well. But we still managed to win games. But a lot of the scrims, we were either stomping our opponents or we would grief the whole team. A lot of games, I think.
Okay.
But yeah, that's like one minor regret I had. Like when he was griefing, I kind of regret not just going with it and doing it together, you know?
Right. This is something I actually wanted to ask you about. Let me transition and ask. So the question I was going to ask is, I actually always describe you as, to me, you're more in the vein of like how Reckless plays AD carry, which is the traditional way of playing the role. You play safe in the lane, you just try and get the CS advantage. You go for a kill if you can, or the jungler's there, but you don't. It's not like you know, the meta right now is insane in bot lane. It's like two people fighting all the time at the beginning, but it's like that was not the way the old school ADC was played. So I always wondered how you would deal with something like that, because just like KaSing, who people often compare him to, they obviously do moves that are genius and win the game like single-handedly, but they definitely, if you're that like safe style of ADC, I mean, I know Reckless had his problems with this too, mate. Like, that's not always the perfect like partner for that sort of an ADC. So like as you say, back then, I guess you didn't know he was Mikyx who he became, right? So it's hard to just go with it. You just think the guy's in sometimes, right?
Yeah, and I just let him in, then I kept my own KDA most of the time.
Right, okay. Classic.
Like for the first year, my playstyle was exactly as how you say it. Like, I think I play the game different now, but back then, for sure, I was... I think I had high KDA most of the time, and
right.
he would die like 10 times, and I would have 1 or 2 deaths. So yeah, I think that's just not good most of the time, to be that opposite. But we still... Like, just laning with him, we had good synergy from the get-go. Like, he was helping me to learn how to play lane more aggro, and I think we ended up being a pretty good bot lane at that point. It was only like Zven-mithy that were just better than us, straight up. But against everyone else, I feel like it was very comfortable to play with him. And he would just do a play, and there's a free kill in lane, I'll take it, and yeah.
As a person, I wondered on this angle as well. When you're someone who's had teammates like that, I mean, you had some of these guys for a year or two you played with, and they then later go on to have insane success. Like obviously, Wunder and Mikyx have done almost everything a Western player could ever dream of, except win worlds. Like they won MSI, they were in the finals, semi-finals a bunch of times. They obviously have won so many LEC trophies. It's a joke at this point, right? Are you the kind of person? Do you ever get like sentimental in that sense? Like if someone was your old teammate, do you ever get like emotional when you see them win, or were they just teammates? You don't give a fuck. How do you vibe with them in that sense?
At the time, yes, very. Nowadays, I think I'm over it. I'm just accepted how things are. But at the time, I think when they went to G2 and they won, yeah, I had some very strong feelings because you just look at it and think that could have been me.
Oh, right, I see. Yeah, you were even thinking I could have been there with them, right?
Yeah, I mean, maybe not, but in another world, you know?
Yeah, if the thing's gone differently, sure.
Like the way our team ended in 2017 was pretty sad, but yeah, I mean, at the time when you see all teammates win for the first time, it's of course you feel happy for them, but also sad for yourself, I guess.
No, that's pretty. I think it's human nature, mate. A lot of people would say the same thing, you know.
But nowadays, it's like I'm kind of over it. I've seen them win over and over.
True, exactly. It got old. Exactly.
I've seen so many different people win and not me, so just accepted it.
Fuck them. Right. Right. Here's what I would ask then. What about this then? Another player, the one I actually haven't mentioned in the lineup so far, is obviously at the time he was called Trashy back then, but everyone will know him as Kold with a K now. Like if you remember, he played in Origin, that was the end of his playing career, and then he had the time when he coached in Team Liquid, which admittedly people don't always remember because unfortunately it was during the same time there was that like shenanigans going on where they removed him, and then he was like the coach for I think the Worlds they went to or something. So basically, if people don't know, he went from being like just a jungler in a team to being like actually quite a highly rated jungler. That's why he got the Origin spot as far as I know. To like after that, I've heard it wasn't just that team. A whole bunch of teams wanted him as like coaching staff or some sort of like outside the game figure. So I wondered actually, as a jungler, I remember when he came in the EU LCS, I didn't think he was anything crazy. He just looked like an all right player. What, did he have some mind for the game or something? Was he a smart guy?
I think so, yeah. I think generally because like when I played with him, I would definitely say his brain was better than his hands most of the time.
Okay.
Without trying to blame him too much,
sure.
But yeah, I don't know if he was like trying to coach the team at the time, but he was definitely a smart player. The problem, I mean, I was good friends with him at the time. We were talking a lot, and I think just in the game didn't really work too great. Okay. When we played, just jungle and bot lane in general, that was a big issue for our team.
What was the disconnect, do you think? Like, what vision was different?
It was kind of a mix. It's like me and Mickey were quiet a lot of the time, and I think Wunder was like he was for sure the best top lane in the league, I think, at that time, so it wasn't natural to play towards topside.
Right.
I think it was more like the year after when I think we got even better, me and Mickey, and we tried to work on it, but then like I think if we had managed to solve that, our team we could have won in that year almost. Like G2 was obviously still very difficult, but I think we could have competed with them. But we didn't manage to fix those issues, and then a lot of shit happened. Coach change, a lot of bad stuff.
Yes. By the way, along those lines, this is just a good segue to ask it. What can you tell me about being coached by Yamatocannon? Because this was obviously one of his first big name teams. And it's funny because even though to this day, some people think he's like a meme or he doesn't do anything in the game and just gives good speech or whatever stupid Reddit narrative is attached to him. I actually think in the last few years, mate, if you just look at the teams he's worked with, he's done a pretty good job. It looks like he's got like his vision of who he is as a coach. If you notice players, this is a key detail a casual fan might not pick up on. You never see players who were coached by him come out and flame him or say he doesn't know anything. Like, I've never seen that ever, dude. So I wondered, what was he like in this period? Because this was like one of his earliest gigs. Like, had he already got like that persona down yet of the coach figure?
Yeah, I mean, when we qualified and then we figured out he was going to be our coach, and he already had, I mean, at least for me, and I think for everyone else too in the team, had like immense respect for him coming in. He taught us like the basics on how to play the game in the beginning, and yeah, I don't think you'll ever hear me speak bad about him because of what he did for me in my rookie year. I think he just set the ground and taught me like so much different stuff, both mentality-wise and gameplay. So that's what I liked about him. He was both like in-game coach, but also I don't know if I would say mental coach, but I had a lot of good conversations with him because I was obviously, I think I was kind of a tilter in my first year, and he always kind of knew what to say to calm me down and not run down the scrims for the entire day. So yeah, I have a lot of respect for him. What I would say though is that like we were a full rookie team, and that's why I think he worked very well for us.
Ah, right.
Like
because people were open to listening to what he had to speak about and stuff. I assume is what you're implying, right?
Yeah, exactly. Like I think in the first year at least it was like, I mean, I didn't really argue much back to him. I think some of the other players did at that time, but I was mainly just trying to listen and learn most of the time.
Sure.
So yeah, I can't really tell how. Obviously, he had some flaws as well. But,
yeah, of course, sure.
I don't know how he. I will just assume he has improved on those, and obviously it's been so much time since we worked together. So I think he's very different today.
I mean, one thing I would ask about, though, is, like, even the thing I think made him become a meme, which was things like he dresses in a suit. Like, I think it's also not just that it's suit, dude. It's like he was a young guy. Like, I think at the time he coached Shorty, he was only like 21 or something. And he obviously, look, he has got a great voice and he looks like a massive figure. But I think people back then thought he was being, like, pretentious, like he was pretending to be like that. Spoiler, if he was, then he succeeded. He faked it till he made it. Because he is that guy now, I can tell you guys. Like, and also that whole thing of, like, you wear a suit and you look smart and you act professional and you give a speech, right? That might sound like silly nonsense on the side, because obviously, yes, the job of coach is still like win the game and do the correct moves. But if you do it well, I think that stuff can add to the ambience of a team, dude. Like as much as people make fun of silly speeches, dude, a lot of coaches who are actual coaches in league either don't give speeches or are terrible at them. Like they don't know how to do the movie speech where you feel like, they give you the right word at the right moment, or you tell them you can beat the... What would you say to this angle? Because I think that's like an underrated part to me of being a coach, Did you disagree? Am I overhyping it?
I need to get my. I kind of agree, but also I have some points against.
Okay.
I would say for the first year, it definitely worked. Like, I know. I mean, we had him for coach like 1.5 years, and once you start hearing the same things again and again, maybe it has less effect. But
that's a famous thing people say from football. After a few years, like the coach's voice gets drowned out. Basically, is what they say.
Yeah, that's kind of what happened, and eventually led to a change. But I would definitely say it worked. Even though myself personally, I'm kind of
you don't need that shit.
No, I mean I think it was fine. But the whole I don't know what word you use for it, but it's like dressing up in a suit, saying all these fancy words. I'm like very opposite of that personality.
Like
right. That could never be me. So I didn't really care too much about it.
Fair enough.
Sometimes I thought it was cool. Sometimes it was
cheesy
too much,
or whatever.
but,
yeah, sure.
Yeah, but I didn't mind too much. Yeah, generally.
Okay. Since you said earlier that you did think at this time you were one of the best bottlers with Mikyx, I should ask about what at the time in this period of dream was your best ever result, which was beating the H2K lineup. If people forget, when Forgiven came back, the notorious Forgiven, who, spoiler, no matter what he says, don't worry, he never thought for 1 second anyone was better than him at AD carry. I mean, even the Asian ones, dude. He had a really out there perspective. So I want to know what you thought of this series, because if people remember, sadly, the only thing people remember about this series is it was the one where Amne and Wunder just played like the same fucking matchup like 3 games in a row or 4 games in a row. But if we forget that, like the whole game isn't just one bloody like Gnar into Gangplank matchup. Like there was a rest of a map. Like in this team, Kobbe, most people at the time are going to say like Forgiven should be the fucking king of ADCs. He was still a very good player at this time. This H2K lineup on paper was supposed to be better than your team. Like this must have been a big result to win this series, right? Do you remember anything about it?
Yeah, I mean, I remember being very happy after winning, and it was really fucking close a lot of times. But basically the series, as how I remember, was just most of the map was even. Like I don't think we were winning bot lane heavily, but I don't think they were either. Like it was kind of similar most games, and then Wunder's Gnar killed everyone in some fights. We had some good team fights, and that's how I remember it basically. I mean the level was not insane back then, so it's not like one guy would just stomp lane and take over the map completely. Our games were also, I remember them as long, slow games that were just decided by team fights, basically.
I could be misremembering, but wasn't that actually one of the strengths of your team, was actually like late game team fighting in general?
Yeah, like mean, it was kind of dependent on champions, like mid and AD champion pool, and I think that was the narrative. At least it was like team fights 1-3-1, which was a very overhyped.
It was the most used way of playing the game at the time. True.
Yeah, but I think we, like at the time, we started playing the map well, and we knew when to group and when to push sides and all of this. And yeah, I guess for our early game, we were kind of passive most of the time, I would say. I don't remember because I don't think there was Rift Herald back then, but maybe there was something else.
I don't think there was. No. It's season 6 we're talking about. Surely they can't be by then.
Yeah. No, game was very different for sure. Like, I don't remember exact meta. So...
Right, obviously winning that series though, the big deal was it put you into the final. So in the first year of your career, you were in the finals of EU LCS, now later called LEC, right? Obviously, people usually frame it this way, so I'll just ask it this way, like, since G2, the G2 that won is the one that won, like that lineup won 3 splits in a row and with Perkz before they'd won the 4th one, etc., right? Was that actually a game where you, obviously this is like the second one of them winning that though, like the streak of them winning. Was this too early? Could this team, was Splyce actually good enough? Like, was there a world where if we just restart the day over, like, you know, fucking, like that movie with Tom Cruise, Edge of Dark, as well, Edge of Tomorrow, the one where you could, like, redo the same day over and over. If I redo that day again, was there a world where Splyce wins the final? Was there, like, too much pressure? I mean, if you're rookie, you're in the final, sometimes people expect you to lose, you know. What would you say about that experience of playing them in a final?
I think it was winnable, yeah. Just based on scrims, we had... we were scrimming them the most out of any team, and it was usually 2-3 or 3-2 for one side. And I think it was, I mean, they were really good, but I think it was winnable for sure. I basically thought that our top lane was better and their bot lane was better, so it was just whoever could snowball harder. But yeah, it was for sure rough to play, because I think Zven-mithy were just like straight up better.
What were they good at? Because obviously they did earn that nickname Best in the West. Like, people just hailed them as the absolute best. What were they so good at?
They understood how to play matchups. They wouldn't die to stupid ganks like me and Mikyx would sometimes. Every fundamental was just there. Sometimes we would do stupid mistakes, but I would say understanding of matchups and how they drafted for it as well. They were just a lot smarter, I think. Like, when I look back at it, I'm thinking, holy shit, how am I so stupid? I'm playing a hard-winning matchup and I'm just fast pushing every wave.
Right.
Farming even in a matchup I should destroy on paper, but yeah. That's like one clear thought I had. I think we played Caitlyn Karma or something really OP into like severe Tam Kench or something. Kind of useless early, and we were like not winning. Just matchup understanding was not there. But it was weird because in some matchups we could actually beat them. Like, just skill-wise, we could for sure win, but then at some point we would slip up, make one mistake, and then it was over for us.
What do you remember about the moment that you actually qualified for Worlds when you won the regional? That must be a big deal, right? Make it to Worlds?
Yeah, it was huge back then.
Were you someone, by the way, who ever set goals like that? Did you try to look in the future, like, I want to do this and this and this? Were you just a guy who plays? What do you like?
No, I just play usually. Like, I take... I mean, how I am as a person, I'm very bad at planning forward. I take everything very day to day, or like just in the present. So I didn't really have any goals like that. I just look at whatever game is in front of me and I try to do my best. So yeah, we narrowly made it. True. Another 5-game series we ended up winning, which is, I guess, what is kind of career defining in a way, because sure. I had a lot of those in my career, and it seemed like in the beginning, like Challenger Series 2016, we usually ended up winning those game 5s, and then later on I tend to, a lot of lost game 5s. That's what I remember since then. But yeah, obviously extremely happy. Like, going to finals and Worlds in first year was insane. Because I don't even think. I mean, you realize after, like, coming into 2017, I realized how bad I was actually. Even though, like, compared to the competition, I think I was good, but just how much you can learn in 1 year is really insane.
The only thing is, though, like when you went to this Worlds, it has to be one of the shittiest World stories anyone's ever had, Kobbe. Because even though you qualified, it should be like, congrats. Now let's see if you can do it at Worlds. Like from your exact specific perspective, you got probably the hardest group anyone's ever had in the history of the World Championship. If people don't remember, Kobbe's Splyce team was in the group that TSM didn't get out of, the season 6 TSM that lost like one best of 3 in their entire summer split. It was that one along with Splyce. And if you remember, the other 2 teams were Royal Never Give Up with fucking Uzi I, who like was obviously, I mean, they were always good. And then Samsung, who went to the final, and the next year with the same like won Worlds. Like, if you look at the context that you were added as like the wild card group team, like this, it's bad enough for the other teams in the group that makes it stacked. But like in your case there, like realistically, do you even think you can get out of a group like that, mate? Isn't it sort of like, come on, this is impossible, isn't it? Like in theory, every team's supposed to beat you in all the games, right?
No, I mean, on paper, sure, but I actually think we could.
Okay.
Because against RNG, I think their top side really sucked, or I mean, our top side was better, and then yeah, they had Uzi, so we just had to figure out a draft to not completely grief the game. And I think we had close games against TSM. We were close to them, but I mean, Samsung was unwinnable. I think just player to player everywhere. I think they were just. I mean, we would basically need a miracle to beat them. But that's also like after playing against each team, my thoughts.
Yeah,
because
right.
before going into it, I didn't really think we would make it out. I just wanted to try to win as many games as possible.
Dude, I hadn't even thought about that as well. The other thing that's insane as well is if you actually just look at like the fucking ADCs, the ADCs are even more bonkers. Fucking Uzi I, Double Lift and Ruler, like these are some like goated players right here. It's no wonder the next year you were like, I'm actually not that good at ADC. It's like, well, to be fair, compared to them, no one is, you know.
I mean, that's the reality check I got, I guess,
Right.
because I didn't watch that much competitive league from Asia at that time. And just getting to play against these players was a big eye opener, I think, because no one in EU was, I would say, even close to their level. I remember first time I played against Uzi, I thought he was scripting or something. It was just unplayable. And who was it? Ruler, Core JJ. They were also, just way better. But at least I learned a lot from that.
What about at this point in time? Like, let me think. How would I describe this? Like, as you say, you weren't someone who was like following like LPL or LCK or whatever, right? When you actually go into a group like this, the other thing is, like, the one upside of going to Worlds, no matter your result, is at least you get to scrim the other teams in the other groups, etc. So it means like maybe you can get the odd scrim if you're lucky against like T1, or at least you scrim the other EU and the LCS teams, etc. From scrims at Worlds, was that a good experience? Like, I've heard it can be a mixed bag. Some people say it's good because it's harder competition. I've heard some people say if you're in like a smaller team, the problem is sometimes the Asian teams either just like beat you 5 games and then won't scrim you, or even worse, it's like if they play you can tell if their coach like told them they had to play you because they just like purposely draft like stupid matchups and try and like humiliate you and shit. Like, so what was actually the scrim experience like? Was it good? Did you get to play top teams, etc.?
I think we got a few days against the top teams, but mostly it was what were they called, like ANX or something.
Oh, right, the one from the Russian league. Yeah, okay.
No, it was what was it? It was some Asian region.
Oh, really? Okay.
I think. But it was like that, some NA teams mostly. I think we only had a few days against maybe SKT. It was like, I think one day against SKT maybe.
Okay.
Lost all games, obviously. But
sure.
Yeah, that's at least what I remember. I don't remember us getting other top scrims than that. It was like once a week, maybe 2 times a week, but otherwise it was just teams close to our level.
And then, as you said, the next year, when the team came back with the same people, obviously there was a different coach, Yamatocannon wasn't there. As you say, you set it up perfectly earlier on. The main problem was just that every time it goes to game 5, you just lose. So you had the one you lost against the Misfits team, who obviously was hyped because they had a slightly different lineup, but because of what happened at Worlds and that. And then the key thing for me was the one where you had another epic battle against G2 in the summer. That was the one where, like, people always forget that one, Kobbe. You know, when they won like the 4th championship in a row and everyone was going like, the great stuff. The real match, the real final was that quarterfinal quarterfinal. Like that's the one I think they even admit they thought they could have lost that one, mate.
I mean, I still remember, yeah, but I guess most people forget.
Yeah. That was a banger though, right?
It was for sure. It was, I mean, not bittersweet, just bitter. Because that was kind of our last chance in this like 5-man roster. After we lost that series, it was completely over. Like we knew there would. I mean, people were saying we would have a good chance in Gauntlet, but honestly, no. Like the team morale was completely destroyed, and we knew we would probably not continue with the same lineup. But maybe if we win that series, something else could happen. Yeah, it sucked very bad to lose.
Why do you think you always matched up so well with that particular team, though? Because like I was saying, you were in the finals against them before. It just seemed like always your team was one of the rare teams, even though you weren't considered like the second best team. Like your team just matched up well, right, against G2.
I mean, I'm not sure. Like, I think at least the rest of the map, we like even from 2016, I think our top lane was better, and everything else was kind of close. I think the bot lane was a bit better. The year after, I think that gap kind of got closer. And it was just, I mean, there was no big difference in any lane, I think, in 2017. It was just draft. Like, I think Jarvan won 5 games in that series. They got Jarvan last game. And I mean, I would need to rewatch it because I don't have.
No, fair enough.
I will for sure remember everything pixel perfect when I see it. But yeah, I just remember a really close game 5. We were in a winning position and threw away.
So, okay, one of the things that changed after this, obviously, was even though it was still Splyce, like most of the other players went out and you were just the one that stayed, right? Why is there any story behind that? Like, did you have any other moves you could have done that you thought about doing? Did you ever think about leaving with some of these other players? Did they just leave you behind? What happened?
What happened? I mean, the team was going to be different, right? I think I kind of knew Wunder would go to G2 because they already tried to get him the past year. And yeah, for him, I guess it would kind of suck. He said no to the best team in the league to keep playing with the Splyce team. For everyone else, I don't know. I think everyone wanted a fresh start. And if one guy leaves, I mean, it's not like one guy leaves. Like everyone will just take the best offer. That's how it was. And I don't think I had anything insane. Like, I would like to keep playing with Mikyx, but I don't think there was any good team we could go to together. So yeah, I just ended up staying because I feel like whatever other offer I had was kind of similar or worse. I mean, there was the Vitality was like something I might have been able to play in.
Right, okay.
Like, they ended up doing really well, but at the time I didn't think so. Like, it didn't sound better than just staying at the same place.
Right. Because the other thing is, like, it's not like this is a bad lineup of players. Like, I know it didn't end up being that awesome overall, but like, if people don't know, this is the lineup. It's before the one in season 9. Remember, this is the season 8 one, guys. So we're talking about the one where it was actually Oduan and Xerxe, who are now in XL, but obviously the Romanians, there's the top lane and jungle. You had Niski, who'd come back from NA, if people remember, when he used to play for Envy, and he came back to EU LCS. Although at the time, funny enough, everyone actually hard flamed him and said he was like a Zoe 1 chick or whatever. But he obviously turned out to be better than that, didn't he, guys? And then obviously you got your old mate KaSing back as the support player. So, like, on paper, this is like an interesting bunch of players. Like, I mean, this team obviously did end up being decent. Like, if you saw this lineup, what was your expectations? You probably think they should do good things, right?
I mean, that's what I thought when going into it. I wasn't confident we were going to win the split, but I thought we would do well and be better than the majority of teams, which is kind of what happened, I guess.
Yeah.
Like, what I remember from this year was just that Fnatic was a bit too good.
For everyone.
Yeah, for everyone. But everyone else was kind of winnable.
Yes. What about, let me ask about a few of the players. So as you mentioned actually previously yourself, you played with KaSing way back as well, when he actually had, if people don't know, he was actually the early EU LCS, if people forget, with H2K and those lineups, right? You played with him again here. To be fair, this is like sort of the last moment where he's really around this level. And then if people don't know, he played for quite many years actually at the ERL level. Who is this guy? Because I always got the vibe from the outside, he's a UK player if people don't know, it's like he clearly is a skilled player. Like I remember he had good mechanics at times with certain champions, but he does seem like someone where I don't don't know if he has the mentality where he's like, I don't think he has like a killer drive, like I have to be the best player or whatever. He seemed like he was a bit more of like a chill guy in that sense. So what would you say about this player from the time you've known him and playing with him? Who is KaSing?
I mean, how you said it actually makes a lot of sense to me, because that's how I felt most of the time. Like, a lot of the time I was not happy. Like, I don't think our laning was very good together. And that was where the whole, I guess, Splyce narrative started, because we were not playing good League of Legends, at least in Spring Split. And we played... And we also
People thought you were like gimmicky, right, as a team?
Yeah, the meta was also kind of like that, but we legit had 60, 70-minute games. It was, it was unreal. But I think what I remember from him was, like you said, I think if he had killer instinct, he would be probably like one of the best supports. Because when he was angry and when he was doing everything he could to win, I think he was really good. But sometimes it was, I don't know what the deal with him was. If he was chilling too much or what it is. Yeah, I still can't really figure that out. I think his champion pool was also kind of holding him back when the meta changed to melee supports, because he was really insane on Janna, Cillian, these kind of champs, but then meta changed to Braum Tamkench, and we needed to spend a lot of time learning that. Yeah. What else to remember?
I think that's all good. We can move on if you want.
Like how you put it makes a lot of sense to me, because it was also a big frustration of mine playing that year, because I felt like we could be really insane together, but something just felt off like a lot of the time, and I couldn't really figure out what it was.
Sure. As you said, like, even though the team had the success that you were third in spring and you were having the good results, like, no one gave anyone credit. Like, this was back when people used to flame EU LCS, and aside from Fnatic, people even included G2 in that dude with the Yarn and Woody, but like, people thought EU LCS wasn't that good. So the main problem, obviously, you also had was, this was also the bullshit year where of all the years, you have to play G2 if you go in the fucking regional, because they fucked up the summer split, if people remember, by losing the Misfits. And so you had to play them in a best of 5 series to go to Worlds. So like, you're probably not supposed to go to Worlds. Like, people saw how good they were.
Yeah, I mean, we ended up getting really close to beating them, but I think we lost game 5.
Yep,
game 5 again
5
that time. But yeah, they ended up being. I mean, at the time, I didn't think they were that good, but they just kept improving, and at Worlds they found their meta, and I mean, obviously, I think they did better at Worlds than we would have done. But it's just funny to think about, because we actually almost beat them. I know it doesn't mean anything, but
true.
Just for fun.
No, it means you guys are equally as good as Royal Never Give Up, technically. So, no, whatever. No, one thing I did want to ask about this year, though, is this was obviously the year where, like, this is complicated to people who don't know it, because it's all based on, like, what terminology we use for coaches in the West. So I've noticed this happened with Peter Dunn a few times in his career. Also happened with Youngbuck when he was in Fnatic, where they don't list the person as the head coach anymore, but they're, like, still in the org, so they become, like, a director of it. You know that shit where they have, like, a different level. It basically, if people don't know, they're just trying to mirror the Asian system, where you have what they call their coach is like the strategic coach, the draft guy, basically, and then the other guy, like, is sort of the dad of the team and runs all teams, the head coach. So anyway, this was the year, though, that Peter Dunn was just the coach. He was the coach of Splyce, and then later went to that figure role. So what I want to know, actually, is this is one of the first years, like, a lot of big Western fans knew about Peter Dunn, because before that, I think he was with, like, fucking INTZ in Brazil and shit. Like, no one knew this guy, mate. He wasn't a big name person like he is now from all the talk shows. So who was Peter Dunn when you first met him? Like, did you know much about him when he became coach of the team? What was he like to work with?
I didn't know much about him, but I remember him from 2016 Worlds. I think I saw him with the Brazil team. But yeah, I had like an interview with him for, I don't know, 1 or 2 hours before the team got together, and I think we were talking a lot about the game and like in-depth strategy stuff. And there was just from the first meeting, I thought this guy knew a lot about the game, which also turned out to be the case. He had, I mean, we had like Peter and Duoq and Mac at the time already in 2018, where, yeah, Peter was the main coach. And I think they already there, it was like, I mean, I mostly got to see what Peter knew, because I don't know how to describe it. It was like every player had one coach they, I guess, preferred to talk to, or it was like split up in a way. Like Odoamne worked better with Duoq, for example, because of the way he gave criticism. Like he thought Peter was like too nice most of the times.
Yeah, the joke, if people don't know, is Duoq or Amle are just flamers, so like they would get along. I could totally see why.
I mean, they would get to the point fast, which is like,
yes,
if that works, then yeah, it's good. But yeah, for Peter, he was like, I mean, sometimes he was like too nice that like he should just tell us what we're doing wrong and flame us. That's especially what Oramne was pushing for, and I thought the same some of the time. But yeah, they've basically just a lot of game knowledge. I think he has like kind of insane CV as well. I guess nowadays, maybe not back then, but I just remember he was like ex-football coach. He had a lot of different degrees, like going to Worlds every year. So yeah, I think from working with him, I learned a lot of things about the game and about myself.
Right, when you came, like I would actually say Season 9 Splyce, even though you did all the shit before with Splyce, like the difference was, like I said, in the old teams, people looked at Sencux or later Mikyx or whatever, you know, like for me, the Season 9 Splyce was the time when you got your shine, because this is when, if people remember, especially like the first part of the year, this was the lineup, if people remember that changed. This was the one where you had Vizicsacsi replaced Odoam there, you had Humanoid come in, this was the first time Humanoid was in LEC, if people don't remember, and obviously Norskeren, now known as Tor, or whatever the fuck he's called now, he was in at the time, and actually was a good player if people don't know, even though he became a meme, partly self-induced on that one, but we won't get into that, obviously. So the question I have about this team was, like I say, to me, this was Kobbe's moment, because actually this was when you were having, I mean, it is what makes it complicated, Kobbe, and you know this, is one, you were actually, people for real had you as like an MVP candidate this split. Like your team was obviously doing very well, but it was also paired with the fact that you do play ADC, and it's not like you're like fucking Uzi eye, mate. Like obviously it was getting to a scenario where the ADC can carry a bunch of the fights and you're fed and all that, right? The problem with trying to compliment you here is the main thing people dissed Splyce for was the whole Splyce time meme, which was actually a meme before Rogue time, if people don't know, of like what happens in the middle of the game and why do they end up in late game team fight. So I wanted to ask you was this, do you yourself feel like this was like a great time for you individually? How did you see this dynamic within the team? Because I know a lot of people inside the team, like Duoq hates it when people say the fucking Splyce time thing. He doesn't think it's a thing. He thinks it's just like bad analysis. So how do you sort of marry that aspect? Because on the one hand, in a way, when they compliment you, they're sort of saying like Splyce never ends a game before the ADC carries the team fight in a way, you know.
No, but it's for me the difference is 2018 and 19. Like I think they are very different.
Okay, go on, hit me with it.
Because in 2018, that was when we had the 60-minute games, and I think even then I got to carry a lot of games, and I think I was actually, I mean, I don't know if officially, but in the spring split I was getting a lot of credit, I guess, for what I was doing, because I got to full build every game, could play with Gathering Storm, so I have like 60 extra AD, and was just the most OP character in the game. But I don't think that was really the case in 2019. Like we didn't have those 1-hour games anymore. Meta was different, but obviously the way we played was also different. I think the main thing was just like we were strong early game. Mid game we would do 1 fuck up or 2 fuck ups. Game would drag on, and then games would go on later. But I think for myself, it was like the year before, so 2018, I think I was playing well. And 2019, the team just kind of ended up functioning together. So it got easier for me to do my thing every single game, because I had everything I needed around me. Like everyone was setting me up perfectly, so I can do what I want. And to me, that's like the big difference from those two different teams.
By the way, on that point, I know this is something that a lot of players and teams, like I said, and coaches staff especially get really annoyed about, is when we say like Reddit narratives, we normally mean not that like it's nonsense, but like it just becomes things that people on Reddit keep repeating. And the problem they have is, famously, they'll repeat it years after it's the case anymore. So like the classic, like I know with your team was basically the first to have this. Later, like Origin got it, where every Origin team, no matter what, is told that they just scale and they never play anything early game. So in your case, people made it sound like as though like you could never draft like a fucking aggressive lane for Kobbe, and all he's trying to do is wait till 45 minutes and then carry on like Sivir or something. Like they made it. Do you think they went too far with the narratives? Like, do you think people have a limited version of who you are as a player?
it depends what time you look at. As I said earlier in my career, I think all these things are correct, but the way I mean, maybe they were kind of correct in those years too. Maybe I think I'm just thinking recency bias because I'm always trying to compare with how I play the game today, and I think it's so different. For 2019, I think our draft was it was the same, basically. It was first pick Xayah if it's open. If it's not open, then first pick Kai'Sa. And if those two are not open, then yeah, freestyle and see what happens. That was, at least for Worlds and most of Summer Split, that's how it was. And these kind of champions would not really stomp lane, I think, depending on matchups. Like Sivir as well, I was playing a lot of Sivir that year, which obviously doesn't stomp lane. Yeah, I mean, with what was he called? Noscaron at that time, Thorin now. He also got a lot of flame for some things, but I actually thought he was kind of good to play with.
Oh, mate, when I did an interview with Cadrol, this is from before your era, but he even said at the time when he was like a young player in the challenge scene, Noscaron was like the best player he'd played with. He like said he was like mega fucking good.
I mean, I think when he came in, we were actually doing well in most of the lanes we played. It was mainly G2 that was very difficult to play against. But for everyone else, I think we were doing pretty well. Yeah, I'm not sure what happened to him. But yeah, it's like something I thought about recently because a lot of people shit on him for... I'm just like, I don't really have much bad to say. I thought he was pretty good when I played with him. Not the best player to ever play the game, but he was not bad for sure.
Sure. What about, what was it like to play with Vizicsacsi, who obviously is like a veteran, you competed against him in past years? Because I've heard in this particular team, this is obviously the one with like people like fucking Noscaron's like a rookie to the league at this point in time. You're known as more of a quiet person. Humanoid's only just joined LEC. Like, I've heard it implied within the team he was more of like a leadership figure in this version of Splyce or something.
Yeah, he was contributing a lot with communication and just plans of what to do. And like that was one of the reasons it was also very comfortable for me to play, because I didn't have to focus too much on directing the team at what to do.
Right.
I would just give my input here and there, what I think we should do, or there, yo guys, I need 200 gold for this, so just wait a bit. But yeah, I just feel like most of the annoying task, as I think about it, was taken care of for me, so it was very easy for me to play most of the games. And yeah, he's a good tank player. I really enjoy that too.
Of course, yeah. I mean, he was just drafted by default at that point. Yeah, true.
Yeah. No, he was for sure nice to play with. And I ended up playing together with him again in Astralis. It was just only one split.
Yeah.
But there I got a whole year with him.
By the way, what was the young Humanoid like then? Because another thing that might surprise people is, even though this is when he was supposed to be like a rookie in LEC, this is another player I've heard dudes in like the fucking Perkz vein, and like he was just cocky from day one and always thought he was good and like has that whole vision for the... It's why it's just randomly in the game. I heard he's just a guy who doesn't give a fucking away. Like, who was young Humanoid?
I mean, he was definitely a funny guy. He was a bit to himself. He was like difficult to figure out in the beginning. Like, he wouldn't always speak his mind or like say what he thinks. You kind of had to drag it out of him most of the time.
Okay.
But at least like towards Summer Split, it was like how to play macro and just how to play the game. I think he was watching a lot of LPL at that time. But yeah, it was like when we started getting better, it was because he had a lot of ideas and we just listened to him. And tried to bring it into our game. Whereas I think for Spring, he was not that vocal, like in reviews outside of game, too much. But yeah, from the get-go, I thought he was really good. Like, I didn't know what I was going into because I don't think I heard of him ever before he came into the team, but he performed from the first stage game, and yeah, respect for that already. I think if you're a rookie and you perform really well in your first stage game, then that's a solid start.
Sure. Another person who obviously you also teamed up with again in Astralis later was obviously Xerxe. Now, I have to ask about him because I feel like, dude, aside from you and the narrative that you just do in the late game farming, and then the idea that this team just does nothing from like minute 15 to 28 or whatever people said it was, the other person who got most hit by Reddit narratives is easily Xerxe. Like, you'll have seen this recently, dude. If they hadn't have released that video that they now deleted of the XL thing, dude, I think his career would be over after this split because all of Reddit just decided like he's just trash, like doesn't know anything about the game, just late game, never fucking ganks. Like, but if you watch that video, already it shows you like he's got comms, he's trying to set up plans with people. Like, it looked like he was the only one sort of trying on a team that was failing it. So I wondered way back then, because this is when that narrative got set. I know he totally disagrees with this. He thinks that actually like he just played that style because it was what the team wanted or it was the meta or some shit. He thinks he's like some aggressive player from Unicorns of Love. So I want to know what was your vision of who Xerxe was as a player? Because as a jungler, he clearly is quite a unique jungler, right?
Yeah, but like I played with him for 2 years in Splyce, and I thought he, like especially in 2019, I think he was way better than the year before. But I mean, I didn't really think like that. Like my biggest criticism would just be he cares too much about what everyone else is saying.
All right, okay.
Because I think it kind of got to him at some points. Like, because I was playing with him and I didn't really see the same things, you know. Like if my jungler is AFK in game, never coming to my lane, then obviously something is happening. Like I will tell him in the game in review. So I don't think that was the case. In some metas, he would be. I don't remember jungle meta back then, but maybe farming a bit too much camps. But when we figured out how to play in that team, I don't really have any criticism about that. I think he provided a lot of stuff for our team. Yeah, he was probably like, I mean, one of my favorite teammates of all time, I think, I played together with. Like, we played for 2 years in that Splyce lineup, and I didn't really have any huge disagreement or anything with him. He was very, I think he was very easy to work with.
I mean, that in itself sounds quite telling, though, mate. Because if you think about the role, that if he really did just permanently AFK farm, like people think, surely the person who'd complain the most would be the ADC. That's the guy who wants the ganks all day. Like, so it must imply like what he did made sense in the context of the game, right?
Yeah, exactly. Like when we learned how to bring our jungler to mid, move into bot, that was how we started playing like this, and we started winning games.
Yes.
So we just kept doing that basically. It was working for us. And obviously, if you would just refuse and go farm his camps, then something would happen. But I think he was very good at doing his job in that team.
The Beatles said they get by with a little help from their friends, but I get by with a little help from my Patreon community. And this video was kindly supported by Matt Pugnaccio Racula, Ahmed Haju, Bot Pounder 420, Toucan, Animosity, Tobias Bernasconi, Jensen Gore, Tosh, and a special thanks always goes out to my main man, Xerxe's Minion. Would you like to ask me a question in my monthly video AMA? Do you want teasers to find out who are the upcoming guests? Maybe you want to take part in one of those lengthy but intense esports discussions I have with my donators, or maybe you want to suggest a guest or a topic that I could cover. Well, if any of those tickle your fancy, put your money where your mouth is and join the Skrilluminati today, where in the description box below there is a Patreon link.